Congresswoman Judy Chu, who represents San Gabriel Valley in Los Angeles County, and Wendy Carrillo, human rights journalist and congressional candidate in California. Thank you both for being here. I'm going to start with you, Congresswoman, the current Congresswoman rather than the potential future Congresswoman. ICE is saying it's not a crackdown that is new and different, but definitely in talking with the mayor of Los Angeles, in talking with various officials that we've had right here on this show, people feel that it is. What do you know in terms of, as a member of Congress, is there a crackdown going on?
I asked Customs and Border Patrol yesterday myself. I asked the Los Angeles branch what were the people that were being detained. Were they people that were actual violent criminals, or were they people that were swept up and had misdemeanors? And I asked for the numbers. They could not give that to me, though they said that they were complying with the older order. However, we Congress members are very concerned about this, and we are asking for an official meeting with Customs and Border Patrol in Washington, D.C. to get the true answer behind this.
Wendy, if it's a surge that has to do with, attempting to remove violent criminals from the streets of Los Angeles, that's one thing. But we just talked with the attorney and the husband of a mom whose only, criminal record involves working and using a Social Security number that wasn't real. So even if it's a surge, it seems to be sweeping up moms.
Yeah, absolutely. And children. And this isn't anything new. We've seen it in the previous administration, but now it's heightened. People are afraid. They're scared. They need to know their rights. And, we need to also talk about the prison industrial complex and detention centers that have detained women and children and families for years now. And so we're seeing that more and more. And now that this mother is being removed from the country, where is she going? Does she have family? Will she be okay? Or is she just being taken to another country that she hasn't known since she was 14?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of human rights violations occurring.
Well, Congressman, one of the sort of challenges when we talk about this issue of unlawful migration or people who are in the country undocumented, it's always seen as just a Mexican problem, right? That it is Mexican citizens crossing the border coming to the United States. But when you talk about the undocumented, there are Asian American undocumented, there are people from the Caribbean who overstay their visas. You just had an official from Ireland come over to inquire as to the state of the many, many, many Irish, citizens who overstay their visas and are in the country without documents. This is not just a Latino problem, or specifically just a Mexican problem. Why do we not talk about that broader immigration issue?
Yes, this is an issue that affects so many people, including Asian Pacific Islanders, who are 10% of the undocumented. So we need to see that this is an issue for all of us. We all have a stake in making sure that there is a way of resolving our broken immigration system. And we know that if we are able to fix our broken immigration system, we actually could grow this economy by $1 trillion over the next 20 years. We could actually reduce the federal deficit $50 billion over the next 20 years. There would be a net benefit if we are able to fix it.
And Wendy, it does seem that there's something sort of existential about the fact that you have, California that has very liberal immigration policies, that is a very sort of blue state in the biggest sense of the world, of the word, and has a very large non-white population, also has this incredibly vibrant economy. So immigration has not exactly hurt California.
No, it's quite the opposite. Immigration and immigrants are what make this country great and what makes the city and the state amazing. We are one of the most multicultural, multi-ethnic states in the entire union. You can go anywhere in the world. Here in Los Angeles, this is why the city is the first place. It is the resistance. It is the first movement against the Trump administration that cares very little about people of color, about immigrants, about LGBT folks, about trans women, about women's rights. And so now we are seeing a movement of people coming together that are unifying against, if you care about Muslims and refugees and have been protesting at the airports, then you should care about families that are being separated and are being detained in detention centers, and their civil rights and human rights are being incredibly abused and violated.
Yeah, and Congressman, we've seen immigration reform go nowhere in the Republican-controlled Congress, and you're now hearing rumblings that this administration that's got Steve Bannon and others who oppose legal immigration, they don't want H-1B visas. They don't want Silicon Valley to be filled with Asian American workers. Do you think there's a possibility that your colleagues on the other side of the aisle could take steps legislatively to curtail even legal immigration?
Well, I was encouraged by the incredible protest against the Muslim ban, and that would have been the first step in trying to prevent people who have a legal right to be here from coming here. Can you imagine all these people came back from visiting relatives in some of the country, were stopped at the airport, and were even being given forms to sign, this form to voluntarily deport themselves. Yes, they were coerced.
Can you explain that form? Because we've seen that online, and you know, we've seen this floating around. So Form 407, it would essentially reverse your green card status.
That's right. You would say, I voluntarily give up my green card status, the green card status that I've worked for years to get. And there are people who've lived here 20 years who are being coerced to sign this form.
Yeah, and you're also seeing many people not being allowed to talk to counsel.
Correct, and so people need to know their rights. So if immigration enforcement goes to your house, you don't need to open the door. You can stay silent. You have a right to an attorney. If they say that they have a warrant, to let them slide it underneath your door and make sure that it is signed by a judge and it has your name and your address, and that immigration forms I-200 and 205 are not warrants signed by a judge, and you do not need to open your door. So immigrants and people that are in mixed status families need to know their rights, and there are so many organizations that have all this documentation in various different languages, like the ACLU being one of them, so that you have that information on your refrigerator, know your rights, talk to your neighbors, and ensure that you have a right to an attorney.
And Congressman, what is Congress going to do about these 750,000 odd dreamers who voluntarily gave their information up? Their contact information is in the hands of the federal government, now in the hands of the Trump administration. Is Congress going to do anything to protect them?
Well, I was encouraged because there was a bipartisan bicameral act that was just introduced. I'm part of it. I'm a co-sponsor of this, and it is an act to provide relief to the dreamers. I was encouraged at the press conference that we had because I heard Republicans actually speaking very strongly in behalf of the dreamers. So we just need for that word to spread amongst more of the Republicans that are in Congress.
Well, I mean, and Lupita, whose story we just told, was a dreamer. She came here when she was a child.
Yeah, the original
So you've already
dreamers.
had a dreamer deported, essentially.
Yes, it's the original dreamers, and that is the story of migration in this country. In that, because of U.S. foreign policy in other nations, we often see these countries struggle with jobs and the economy, and there's not a lot of opportunities. So people don't migrate because they want to. They do it because there are necessities, and you need that. That's one of the reasons that my family immigrated from El Salvador during a civil war, and we came to this country seeking opportunity in the American dream. So now, even years later, we're seeing the same cycle. It's like we're reliving the 80s. We're reliving the 60s when the U.S. had Operation Wetback. And so now it's clearly targeted. We're seeing it in communities across Los Angeles and across the country. This one was in Texas. And so people just need to know their rights and know that they don't need to open the door, and then they could remain silent, and that they have a right to an attorney.
And, Congressman, one of the things, probably the thing I hear most from people who watch the show is, are the Democrats going to stand firm and fight, or are at some point they're going to start to capitulate and try to cooperate with this administration? Do you see among your caucus a will to wage a sustained fight with this administration?
Well, we must when there are actions that harm our people. These actions, these Muslim bans, this immigration executive order, they are un-American. They are taking us backwards from this America that we know was built by immigrants, that is strong because of its diversity. And so we know that we have to fight to keep this the America that we know.
Yeah, and I guess for you running for Congress, do you think that Democrats right now have been strong enough up to now in terms of standing up to the Trump administration?
I think that there have been some Democrats that have been clearly fearless. There are some that have been very safe and not doing enough, and that is the status of the current Democratic Party. And so there are people across the country that want to see the party be a lot more forceful and fearless and truly represent the voices of the people of this country. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we have to lobby so hard against voting for somebody like Jeff Sessions, and the Democrats need to be lobbied without knowing, like, you should know that you should not be voting yes on Jeff Sessions, but you need to be called 50,000 times in order for you to make that kind of vote, shows a complete disconnect between the Democratic Party and the people that it's